Hey everyone, we had a great guest today. I think everyone's going to learn. I know people are going to learn a lot from Matt Neylon. And Matt, we met at HR West, I think probably 6 weeks ago now or something like that in Oakland. And Matt was doing a roundtable on generative AI. And I was just super impressed to hear the thoughtfulness and the ideas and the things that Matt's been doing. So I wanted to bring Matt on and introduce him and then just get to the nitty gritty and how you got involved from HR and using Chat GPT. Matt, take it away. Give us a little quick intro about yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast today. I had spent about 15 years in education, and right around COVID, just after the pandemic, we were seeing teachers leaving the field of education in crazy numbers.
Oh, yeah.
At one point, there was a statistic that over 50% of teachers were considering leaving the field, not just their current job. And in a field that's so purpose driven, we just were really baffled by that. The head of my organization, school system, said we really need to focus on employee experience, employee wellness, retention, and then recruitment because we're going to have to open up new pipelines. There aren't as many
Yep.
people graduating with education degrees. So we went down that path and we've done a great job. But along the way, what we realized is the things that burn people out are a lot less about needing to feel recognized in rewards and benefits and parties. It's more about the day-to-day processes that are just outdated. There's a lot of friction, very manual, very paper-driven, or copying and pasting things you shouldn't
Yeah.
have. So I've become a really close friend with our IT department, and we've just gone down this road of how can AI make life more efficient, save people time, and most importantly, save people energy. And it's been really encouraging to see the plethora of ways that are low cost, that are super doable, that we could lean into.
And what's one of the key ones that got you started? Because I think that's the biggest problem. How do you start? And what was something you did that just to kick the tires, if you will?
Us, the first big breakthrough was with onboarding. So we
Hmm.
realized that with employee onboarding, there's anywhere from 20 to 50 tasks that we need to do. It touches
Yep.
multiple departments. It touches L&D, HR, IT, and we just needed a better way to communicate. Sending each other emails saying, oh, their email is set up. Now you can do this. Okay, they're in the system. Now you can make their fob. It was so inefficient. So we just used like a project management board, that thing that was easy to find, easy to use, and it would ping the next person. One person got done with their task, it pinged the next person. And we just saw an incredible time savings. Our inboxes were not nearly as full. And we were like, wow, if we could set this up in about 2 hours and it has saved us all this time, what else could we do with it?
What's the next one? Yeah. So did you start with stickies and people just drop them? That's one way to do it. Like most people are like, where do I start? You need software. No, you got software. It's right here. It's step one. Okay, I have to do this. And Bob's are yellow, Matt's are green. And what does it just go through the process?
Yeah,
And you got
literally
whiteboards.
everybody knows their piece of the puzzle. Very few people have a handle on the whole puzzle, right? So
Yeah.
I know when I hand it off to IT, they do a bunch of things and it gets done. But we've never sat in the same room and said, what do you actually do? In what order? And so we're big design thinkers. We're all about human-centered problem solving. So we just got
Wow.
in the room and, like you said, pulled out a bunch of Post-its, figured out what was the sequence of what needed to happen, where were inefficiencies that we could clean up, and we
Yes.
learned a lot about each other in that day. It was also a great empathy building exercise.
Awesome. And there's a saying, and I think it might even be on our website on the page for all the Go Hire talks, is that you can't automate something that you can't write down. And that's my entire belief. And most people are like, wait, what do you mean? Just like you said, if you can't take the stickies, you have to start with the sticky notes because the sticky notes you're throwing out. Oh, we don't have to do that in this case because Bob already did that. So we're just doing the duplicate process. And then you segment them like it just here's a straight line. There's never a straight use case. They're always, oh, but if this, go over here, and then you can put it in the software. Then you can draw it in a drawer program if you wanted, or you can take a picture of it. I think probably now you can probably even take a picture of it, put it in Chat GPT or something like that, and say, give me the
Well,
flow.
Yeah, very few of us are coders, but when
Yeah.
you set up these automations, you have to tell it when X happens, then do this. It
Yep.
sounds super simple, but how often have we really thought about what is the trigger to do the next thing? Is it a date? Is it a person? Is it a completion of a task? And once you start to work through those details, everything starts to speed up.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because it's great to hear it coming from you because this is what, I do for companies is help them walk through the process. It's always there's a lot of confusion about what's automation, what's AI. A lot, I would say 99% of the stuff that I have done with GoHire has been automation. AI is really only coming into it now because of the generative part. That makes it easy. But automation is if a candidate uploads a resume, then it goes to the ATS, which talks to your HRIS system. That's automation. That's not AI. So we you got everyone's been doing automation to some extent, but it's this kind of mass if you want to really tackle bigger processes across the team, then you do have to go in a room. You do have to get stickies out and start walking through. And I think the other one I like to do, the first exercise in one of these is what's the biggest one? Write down the step one is okay, tell everyone what we're going to do. Step two is what are the things that are blocking your email? What are the things that take time? Like just if we have 4 blocks, what takes too much, what's duplicate, just big chunks, put a sticky in anything under those topics up on the wall, and then we'll figure out which one can possibly get the best reward
Right.
with the least risk, maybe to start with.
The other thing you have to realize about the HR profession, very few of us have degrees in HR. Like a lot of people came into this from a different angle. While I have a 4-year degree to be a teacher, I took a 4-month class and a 4-hour test to become an HR professional. And so most of us have had to focus on the operational, the urgent.
Yeah.
Very few of us had classes in the strategic and the important, if we look at that Eisenhower matrix. So it's hard when you say, hey, we're going to carve out 3 hours to build this thing that's going to create a process that automates and saves us hundreds of hours down the road, because I don't have 3 hours today. But if you can find it, seeing that bigger picture really makes a difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that was the first one. And that was that onboarding of teachers or was it across the board, just any employee, like the real broad based
Oh,
process?
because yeah, we had to have different systems. We have part-time, full-time, exempt, non-exempt, community coaches, full-time teachers, staff. We really needed to build a system that could handle all of those. Certain things everybody goes through, and other
Yep.
things are differentiated by role. But if you don't have it written out, then every person feels like you're reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. And they can't communicate what's the next step.
Right. Yeah.
But so if people know that next step, we know this one's going to take a little time because Matthew's out and Matthew's got to do this trigger. So that's okay. And there may be a backup, but we know who it is, like what to do.
Actually doing this helps you identify those single points of failure. So if we do find an action where Matthew's the only one who can do it, we need to train someone else. We need to cross train because that is going to slow us down. And we can't, the pandemic taught us anything, is that we can't afford to be reliant on one person.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how long ago did you guys start that process? So obviously it was post 2020, 20, was it in 21, 22?
About 2.5 years ago, yeah. So
Okay.
almost 3 years ago, we really felt the need. Just before AI came on the scene, we started with the automations. And then once we did onboarding, another place I saw us wasting a ton of time was with recruiting. We would get 5 people on a screen call, and a lot of smaller nonprofits or smaller businesses do this. Everyone wants to meet the candidate, right? And so we get all these people on a screening call. We had to figure out their calendars. That took a bunch of time. Then you're wasting 6 hours worth of labor for people to sit through. And in 5 minutes, they knew if the candidate was going on or not. It was pretty obvious 90% of the time. And
Yep.
so we said, how can we use these little AI readers that are going to record the call and give you a breakdown and give you a highlight reel so that only one person has to sit in the screen call. And then everybody else can just review it when it works for their schedule. They don't need to spend a full hour. They can fast forward to the piece of the conversation that applies to them. And we started realizing just how many hundreds of hours we could save in recruiting.
Wow. And this is amazing because well, I think there's two biggest mandates I hear when I talk to HR leaders and recruiting leaders today is I've gotten these stats from at least talking to 250 people who have done surveys with me that stated, I asked, what's one of the biggest pain points? And the primary answer is not enough qualified candidates is number one. And number two, there's about three, but need to do more with less.
Yep.
Right? The mandate to do more with less. So it's not about we need another tool. Maybe you need another tool, but you need to understand that what's stopping that you need another tool, why you need that tool. If you can justify that you can save all these hours of doing these other things, that's great. So did you initiate the process mapping for your team?
So thankfully, we've got a CEO that is really big on data and technology and very forward thinking. Our mission starts with where a School of Inquiry, Innovation, and Impact. So we're not afraid of new ideas, which was half the battle, right? And one of the things I've learned as I've moved into the HR world is that HR is rightfully a control on the business. Their strength is in their consistency. The fact that you get paid every 2 weeks or bi-monthly, whatever it is, that is a strength that they are so consistent. There is almost no room for error. So it's
hell or high water, you're getting your paycheck.
Yeah. They have got to protect the organization. That is part of their function. And so as ambassadors for the organization and these bastions of like consistency, they're not often, ooh, what's the new hot, cool thing out there that I can try? And so I really had to push my team to say, hey, if you can see the bigger picture, this is going to help us. And if we don't try some of these things, we will get left behind. But it's not because they're old school or whatever. It's because their job requires them to really be accurate and consistent 100% of the time.
Yeah, and that's a huge opening just to understand that model, because AI can be scary. Like I've been doing things and I'm like, I had this one episode where the data just turned out wrong. And literally, I just was asking it to go through a list of contacts and it looked up which was a bad phone number. And it just decided to put a 0 at the end of phone numbers because there weren't enough characters for whatever reason it decided to do this. But the way I wrote the script, I knew, oh, no, I need to backtrack. I knew where the breaks were, like something happened. But so yeah, things can be a little bit scary, but it's really about that process. Can there be a gain from doing this? I'm glad you guys jumped in. So how big is the team? And the team now on the HR team, are they, you guys came from a design thinking background too. So is everyone like always, hey, Matt, I got this idea. Is there a lot of ideation coming around in the team now?
There is. I'm a big disciple of Patrick Lencioni's Working Genius, and he says you're going to have wanderers and ideators on the team, and they usually frustrate the tenacious folks that get the job done. And so we definitely have folks that are coming with ideas around the clock, and the folks that actually execute are like, okay, you want to help us make that happen? So there's sometimes tension there, but we can appreciate that we need both of us in order to get the project done. And another thing that we realized early on was that we didn't need to just ask the question about time's a big deal. And AI, I think most people realize now it can create efficiencies. But we also needed to ask the question about energy. There were some processes you only do once a month. So it's not going to save you a ton of time, but it wipes the team. Like it's just the most important thing. It's so frustrating. And so we had to ask not only what are all the things that could save time, what are the things that deplete our energy, and could we fix those? One of the things that just is like a sore spot for our HR team is when people ask questions that are in the self-service portal. If you just go and look here, you can answer your own question, but people always want to ask someone. And so we called those like tier 1 support. And we're like, could we put all our tier 1 support in a chat bot? It doesn't even necessarily have to be an AI chatbot. It could just be your typical old Zendesk type of chatbot.
Yep.
And we realized, hey, that could take a lot of emotional, mental strain off the team.
Yeah, because it's also interruptive too. Oftentimes they need it right away, and you're deep in a project, and
Mhm.
then there's the, oh, I got to come back, and then I come back to my work, and I'm like, if they had only just looked,
Yeah.
and now I have to, what the heck was I doing? Yeah, so that, yeah, that's great. I think there's another tidbit in there is that a lot of people talk about, oh, hey, let's automate this process that takes had a lot of breakpoints and things, but if the process isn't easily definable, even though it's a big process and you may want to take it on, but if it's not easily definable because there's just too many variables, find another process to work on to start with.
Yep.
Because you can't eat an elephant in a single bite, right? You can't change massive processes. And I'm sure that's the stuff that like freaks out the payroll team. Oh, we're going to change payroll stuff. And we have all these great ideas. And they're like, no, we have to get it out every 2 weeks. Like
Right.
we're not.
With these strategic processes, I'm also a big fan of the entrepreneurial operating system where you've got to do this elephant one bite at a time, right? And so in our weekly meeting, we would say, what's the one thing we can get done by next week? And this is, I'm a
Perfect.
little afraid to admit this, but I think there are a lot of people who would empathize with me here, especially from smaller organizations. One of the first things we had to do was clean up our queries and reports. Like we just needed to get queries that were pulling the right data so we could even feed it into an automation. And there's no shame in saying, I'm going to take a week or two to just build this really great, clean report. So I know that every time I put it in this thing that I'm trying to automate, it's going to be right.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was the partnership? Because and I think this is key to a lot of this. A lot of stuff we talked about at HR West too was the partnership with IT. How was even your team, and maybe not just you, but how was the partnership before, and how did it change with IT?
Yeah, IT, I think sometimes there's so much brain power in IT. A lot of times the professionals working on that team, they can do amazing things they never have to lean into because so much of their job is like maintenance of software and hardware and acquisitions of products.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
they get relegated to the Apple counter specialist type of person when really most of them can do incredible things. So just acknowledging their skills and saying, hey, I need your partnership because I know you have knowledge I don't have. If I want to connect my ATS to my HRIS, I don't know how to make that connection. If I want to
Mhm.
start doing some of these automations that require a connection through a third party to get information from here to there, you know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I know what I need, but we've got to work together. And that
Yeah.
just the respect was the first step. Also, because they do have a handle on the budget, you might be buying something with your departmental budget that really the whole organization could benefit from and would be cheaper if you had an enterprise license. Or maybe three other departments are also paying for that thing and you're
Yep.
wasting money. So IT can be helpful when it comes to procurement because you just don't know what you don't know. And the third way that IT was helpful was really helping us think about the way data moves. So do we just want it to go one way? Do we want it to go two ways? Is there a cleaner way to make this happen that doesn't require as much manual pulling reports and stuff like that? We didn't know what we didn't know when it came to the network of all of our tools and our tech stack, and they were extremely helpful in helping us realize, okay, you think you want to do it this way, but you really want to do it this way. The first step
Mhm.
is just making sure they're not the folks that just say, no, we can't do that. No, we don't have that tool. Creating
Yep.
an open mindset that says, we're going to solve this. You're going to help us solve it. We just need your expertise to figure out the best way to solve it.
Yeah, that's great. That reminded me, your story reminded me of when I was early in my, like I think 2 years out of college, I was consulting. Do you remember Gateway, the old computers in the cow box? I was working at their headquarters, and I didn't even realize this until I think the Oscars that I studied workflow process automation in college, what's called Taylorism, and I was I had the opportunity to work as a consultant at Gateway, and one of the things I needed was I needed to get some stuff from the IT team, And they're always busy. There's a long list, and you're always at the bottom of the list because I was a young kid that no one cared anything about. But I needed some critical stuff for this big implementation we were doing. And so one of my friends said, bring him Dr. Pepper and a Snickers bar.
Yep.
The one guy. And so I show up and he goes, yeah, talk to Christy, right? And I'm like, yep. And he goes, okay, you're in. What do you need? But that you have to figure out what it is to get that bridge to get on the radar. And I think a lot of that, like we had talked at HR West about with using ChatGPT and private data and things like that. What was the kind of strategies, things like that, if you've had resistance or you just need the insights coming from HR? How can an HR person bring an olive branch to IT to start the conversation?
Yeah, you pointed to the respect thing we talked about earlier. I also think building the case for how much time it's going to save IT. If we will have to ask you for less if you can help us with this. And most IT folks are just like you. They're process people. They really appreciate when something works, is efficient, is reliable, and has redundancy. And speaking their language, a lot of it I have found is really helping them realize this is because they're also a control. We talked about HR being
Yep.
IT is also a control, and nowadays very worried about data movement and data exposure. So if you can say, hey, we have helped, we've written this policy, we already know the risk, we've assessed the risk, we've written a policy for the risk, so we need you to help us with this tool that we know fits within the policy, will reduce our risk or exposure. And that really helps them take a deep breath and trust you
Mhm.
versus another department that's just coming in and saying, I need all this stuff to move all over the place. IT has the benefit of knowing the laws, knowing the procedures, knowing the restrictions and guidelines. So IT can trust you a little more than the average team.
Yeah, because it's interesting. The first thing I thought of is they're both risk averse teams by
Yep.
nature because you're building the cornerstone of the business, right? So that is where you have to partner up and find that olive branch that just gets everyone to open up and be open, get that open mindset to start doing this. Because one of the things that we talked about again at the panel was what tools can you use for chat gpt or perplexity or different tools, and is there currently a policy or any kind of guidance from HR for employees and what they should be looking for or can do? How did you guys tackle that kind of process?
Yeah, we definitely, before we looked for a tool, we wanted to develop the questions. And so we sat down with IT and we said, hey, these are the things we know we're looking for. We want to make sure it's a closed loop system. We want to know what they do with our data. We want to know the interoperability with other systems. What questions are we missing as we go out and look for the right
Mm,
tool, try to build the right thing? What are the other boxes we have to check before we proceed with a partner? And they helped us find our blind spots.
yeah, that's perfect. Because one of the things we had mentioned is as people are exploring these tools like ChatGPT, just make sure that if you have a free tool, you can't put any PII data in it. You can't put HIPAA data. You can't put employee info in it. You can't put sales reports or attendance reports or whatever you're trying to draft up, make a nice little project for someone. You can't put proprietary data in those systems in a free system because it trains the model on it. You're giving, not that someone can say, oh, what's the Mount Vernon employee data look like? They can't ask a tool like that, provided you've not provided the data. So,
Great at HR usually has to send out surveys. It's great at synthesizing survey data because you don't have to put identifying information in there. It's great at, if you use it for recruiting, really the only rule is you've got to disclose to who you're recruiting what you're using. That could be
yeah,
in a link, in a policy, in an email when you start talking to the person. But I also think that people need to make sure they're using the tools they have. Sometimes we drive a
yeah,
Cadillac like a Yugo. We're not even using the HRIS or the ATS to its fullest capability. My solution would be reach out or look at the tutorials and make sure that the thing doesn't already do the thing you're looking for, break it, and then when it can't do what you need, that's what you need a solution for. But
yep,
a lot of our folks, they're just using the buttons they know how to click and the menus that they're used to touching.
yeah. Great. So to wrap up, What are some tips you'd give to HR teams that are just starting off with this automation piece? But summer, we've talked about it a little bit, but just a couple tips off the top of your head of how to start or how to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, I would just start with everyone always talks about an audit. No one likes the word audit, but just start by observing what wears you out and what wastes your time. Have a
Mm.
collaborative document or have everybody have a running note of during the week, every time I went, ugh, I wrote it down somewhere. And when you meet,
Uh,
yeah, when you meet for your next meeting, go through those things and see what is connected. Where are the similarities? That's the thing we need to tackle first. So first, I think it's just taking an audit of what are the things that are wearing you out and wasting your time. Then, once you identify what the things are, nailing down the process, like you said, and then it's partnering with IT to find the right tool or solution to save you a whole lot of time in the long run. It's really easy today to put a 2 or 3 hour meeting on the calendar for 3 weeks from now. It's not easy to put a 2 or 3 hour meeting on the calendar for tomorrow. And so
yeah.
I would just encourage you, put it on the calendar, say, we are going to be strategic in this next fiscal year. These are the blocks of time we're going to protect to do that work. And then everybody's on board.
That's awesome. It's funny the process you just mapped out. It was something I started doing product stuff for the when we're building our software, which is what will break first. So we have a tag, what will break first, and it's you go same thing. You go through this process like I'm onboarding a client. And I'm like, this darn trigger. And I use the analogy like this, and maybe this is a similar way to explode the risk, if you will, is to say if we're bringing on one customer and we have to stop in this process, that's fine. But what if we had to bring 100? If we had to onboard 100 people right now, what's going to break first? What is the most critical thing that we have to fix so we can get those 100 people through? And then the next time you go through the loop, if you fix that one, okay, it's going to be a different problem or a different problem. But it's if you scale up your problem to a much like 100 times, what's the thing that you can't get away from? And if
Yeah.
you just knock that one out, like your onboarding process, oh, we have everyone's emailing each other back and forth. I think that, yeah, that's what will break first has been the key in my product management life if of it.
Well, and Jonathan, if anyone's listening and they're not a big systems thinker like the things we're talking about, I would really encourage folks, or if you have someone on your team who's just scared of this technology because they don't even know, it seems like the boogeyman, it can do too much, knows too much. I would encourage them to just treat it like a friend for a little while.
Yeah.
HR has to have conversations they can't tell anyone else about. They have to do things no one else can know about because of the nature of the role. And a lot of times I'll just go in and say, hey, I've got to have this conversation in an hour about X. You don't have to put any identifying information, but let's work through how this could play out with an employee. And it is a great sounding board for ask what questions to ask, how to follow up, how to start the conversation, how to change your tone, all those things you can't ask anyone else because it's sensitive information. Start there. And then I
Yeah.
think people will start to trust the tool a little bit more.
Yeah. And that, specifically if you're using like ChatGPT on a free account or whatever, that's the thing. Like, even if you're like, oh, I have this dinner party or as you said, something at work, but even, hey, what's that old band that kind of sounded like this?
Yeah.
Just start it, just play with it instead of watching the news for a half hour and getting bummed out about another a news reel. Just open ChatGPT and just ask it something about what you're trying to do tomorrow or like that email, perfect example,
Yeah,
how to
I've
deal
got
with a
20 minutes
conversation.
to make dinner and I've got this stuff in my fridge. Help me out. It'll do it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I had a friend the other day, this is like a couple months ago now, said his son who goes to college at University of Washington, they have a new Nespresso machine at home. And the son's, oh, yeah, I'll just figure it out. He's talking to Chat GPT and it had the entire instruction manual. And it just said, take this, do that. And he's just following along instructions. They go, have you done that now? Walk me through the steps. And yeah, it's amazing. Just start with something small, like how to use your coffee machine.
Yeah,
right?
I think HR can be a really lonely place. And what's great about AI is that you can have a partner in the work that you're doing. And think about it, anyone who's applying for jobs moving forward who knows how to use AI, it's two or three people are applying for that job. So double your efficiency, double your skills, double your brain power or more, and don't get left behind. You've just got to start somewhere. This is where the world's heading. There's no reason to be scared of it. Just give it a try.
All right, that is perfect, Matt. Matt, what's the best way for someone if they wanted to reach out to you and say hi and meet you, hopefully a conference or two?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Matt Neylon. Like I said, I work in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're ever in Atlanta, I'd love to grab coffee with you. But LinkedIn, that's probably the best way to start.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. This has been phenomenally helpful. I hope a lot of HR people just really learn and dive in. This is great.
Me too. Let's do it.
All right. That's perfect.